Judas Iscariot. When we mention betrayal, one name echoes louder than any other: Judas Iscariot. For more than 2,000 years, his story has shaped what the word traitor truly means. Judas wasn't an enemy hiding in the dark. He was one of Jesus' 12 disciples, trusted so deeply that he kept charge of their money. That closeness is exactly what makes his choice unforgettable. As the movement failed to bring the political revolution many expected, disappointment and greed began to pull at him. For 30 silver coins, about 4 months of wages, he agreed to reveal his teacher's location to the authorities. And when the soldiers came, he didn't call from afar. He greeted Jesus with a kiss. The universal sign of loyalty turned into the mark of betrayal. Hours later, regret crushed him. The same hands that took the silver threw it back, but the act could not be undone. His decision set in motion one of the most famous trials in human history and changed the course of an entire faith. Over centuries, his name became part of every culture's language for deception. Even now, to be called a Judas is to be accused of the deepest personal betrayal, the kind that doesn't just break trust, it rewrites it forever.
Marcus Junius Brutus. Few betrayals shook the ancient world like Brutus's. He wasn't just another Roman senator, he was a protege, almost a son to Julius Caesar. Adopted into Caesar's inner circle, Brutus owed his career, his wealth, even his survival to the dictator he'd later strike down. Yet beneath the loyalty sat a lifelong devotion to the old Roman Republic, an idea dying under Caesar's growing power. By 44 BCE, Rome revered Caesar as almost divine. To men like Brutus, that looked less like glory and more like monarchy, the very thing their ancestors had sworn never to allow. Friends, ideals, and fear of tyranny collided. On the Ides of March, Caesar walked into the Senate confident in his control. What followed lasted barely 60 seconds. Roughly 20 senators attacked, led by Cassius and joined by Brutus. When Caesar saw him among the blades, legend says he whispered, "You too, my child," a line that outlived the empire itself. The conspirators claimed they'd saved the Republic, but instead they unleashed chaos. Within 2 years, Brutus was dead, and Caesar's heir Octavian ruled. The liberator had cleared the path for the very empire he feared. For 2 millennia, his name has meant the noble traitor, proof that even idealism, when mixed with ambition, can turn love into ruin.
Mir Jafar. In 1757, Bengal was one of India's richest provinces, and its future turned on one man's ambition: Mir Jafar, the commander of Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah's army. Facing the British East India Company at the Battle of Plassey, Siraj trusted his generals. Jafar appeared loyal, commanding thousands of troops positioned to defend him. But behind closed doors, he had already struck a deal with the company's representative, Robert Clive: stand aside in battle, receive the throne in return. When fighting began, Jafar's armies simply waited. The Nawab's men collapsed, and by nightfall, the British claimed victory with minimal losses, just 22 dead compared to hundreds on the other side. Days later, Mir Jafar was crowned puppet ruler of Bengal. Yet his reward was poisoned. The East India Company drained the treasury, dictated policy, and reduced him to an emblem of greed. Within 4 years he was replaced, then restored, then discarded again. His name remains a synonym for betrayal in South Asian languages, a reminder of how one man's ambition opened the gates to nearly 2 centuries of colonial rule. Mir Jafar's cunning wasn't brilliance. It was short-sighted survival that traded a kingdom for dependence and loyalty for legacy.
Benedict Arnold. At the height of the American Revolution, Benedict Arnold was a national hero. He helped capture Fort Ticonderoga, led daring raids through Canada, and played a key role at Saratoga, the victory that convinced France to join the war. But beneath the uniform burned bitterness. Congress passed him over for promotions, accused him of corruption, and dismissed his sacrifices while others took credit. Pride turned to resentment, and resentment to betrayal. In 1780, now commander of West Point, the fortress guarding the Hudson, Arnold secretly negotiated with British Major John Andrey. For £20,000 and a high rank in the British Army, he promised to surrender the fort. Everything seemed set until Andrey was captured with incriminating letters. Arnold fled downriver just hours before his arrest, escaping to British lines. The plot's collapse stunned both armies. He fought the rest of the war wearing red, but neither side trusted him. The British valued his intelligence. Americans branded him forever as their greatest traitor. His name became part of everyday speech, a living synonym for betrayal of country. Benedict Arnold proved that sometimes a single wounded ego can do what enemy armies cannot.
Ephialtes of Trachis. In 480 BCE, at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, a few thousand Greek defenders, led by King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, held off a fast Persian invasion. They might have held longer if not for one local man, Ephialtes of Trachis. Knowing the terrain better than anyone, he revealed a hidden mountain path called the Olympia Trail, a route that let Persian troops circle behind the Greeks. For gold and promises of favor, he guided them through the darkness. By dawn, the Spartans were trapped between two fronts. Leonidas and his men fought to the last, but the pass fell, one of history's greatest last stands destroyed from within. Ephialtes expected wealth. Instead, he earned eternal disgrace. Within years, he fled his homeland and was killed in exile. His name in Greek literally means nightmare, and it still does today. His act changed the course of a war and proved that even the mightiest wall of shields can be undone by one man's greed.
Wang Jingwei. Fast forward to the 20th century and the chaos of a nation under siege. Wang Jingwei was once a revolutionary hero in China's fight to end imperial rule, a close ally of Sun Yat-sen and early supporter of the nationalist cause. But after years of political struggle and repeated exile, his idealism hardened into pragmatism. When Japan invaded in the late 1930s, Wang chose cooperation over resistance. In 1940, he signed a deal with Tokyo and headed a puppet government in Nanjing, claiming it would spare China further suffering. It didn't. Millions died under occupation while he maintained a hollow appearance of leadership. To his followers, it was diplomacy. To his people, treason. He died in 1944, still insisting he'd acted for peace. After the war, his regime was erased, his body later dug up and burned by furious crowds. Quisling became Europe's word for collaborator. In China, that title belonged to Wang Jingwei, the patriot who believed surrender was courage and discovered too late it was betrayal.
Vidkun Quisling. In Norway, one surname has replaced the very word traitor, Quisling. Before World War II, Vidkun Quisling was an officer, humanitarian, even Norway's Minister of Defense. But ambition outgrew patriotism. When Germany invaded in 1940, Quisling didn't resist. He broadcast over national radio, declaring himself head of a new government loyal to Hitler. For the Nazis, it was perfect, an obedient local to legitimize occupation. While Norwegians were imprisoned and deported, Quisling lived in a mansion guarded by German troops, signing away national sovereignty. He believed cooperation would protect Norway from destruction. Instead, it deepened the devastation. As Allied forces advanced in 1945, his power collapsed overnight. Tried for treason after the war, he was executed by firing squad. Yet in linguistic immortality, he found an ironic fame. Newspapers from London to New York used Quisling as shorthand for collaborator, a label that still survives. He reminds us how quickly conviction can become convenience when fear meets ego.
Kim Philby. In the shadowed world of the Cold War, few double agents matched Kim Philby's brilliance or audacity. Educated at Cambridge, urbane, witty, and trusted inside Britain's MI6, he spent nearly 3 decades passing secrets to the KGB. He wasn't motivated by money, he was a believer. An early 20th century idealist convinced communism would shape a fairer world. His charm and competence led him climb to chief of anti-Soviet operations, giving Moscow direct access to Britain's spy network. Dozens of Western agents were exposed or killed because of his leaks.
When suspicion finally closed in, he dismissed it with humor and impeccable manners. Even his interrogators found him disarming. In 1963, warned that exposure was imminent, Philby slipped away in Beirut and resurfaced in Moscow. The Soviets gave him medals, the West gave him infamy. Behind the public face of decorum had lived one of the most effective moles in history, a man who traded loyalty for ideology, and in doing so, destroyed both.
Aldrich Ames. Fast forward again to Washington, D.C., 1980s. Aldrich Ames was a senior CIA counterintelligence officer, trusted to hunt Soviet spies. Instead, he became one. A master's-level infiltration executed from inside the heart of American intelligence. Crushed by debt and drawn to luxury he couldn't afford, Ames sold secrets to the KGB for an estimated $2.7 million, worth more than $6 million today. He handed over names of U.S. double agents working inside the Soviet Union. Within months, at least 10 were executed. His reports were so precise, the KGB once joked they should make him an honorary colonel. For nearly 9 years, he fooled lie detectors, audits, even his closest colleagues. The CIA lost countless operatives before analysts finally noticed extravagant spending that didn't match his salary. Arrested in 1994, he pleaded guilty and is serving life without parole. Aldrich's names prove that betrayal doesn't always come from ideology. It can come from something far simpler: greed dressed in a government badge.
Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plotters. In 1605, England stood on edge. Religious tension between Protestants and Catholics had festered for decades, and a group of young Catholic zealots decided that persuasion had failed. Only an explosion could reset history. Their plan was astonishing: blow up the Houses of Parliament during the state opening, killing King James I and the entire political class in one strike. At the center was a former soldier, Guy Fawkes, chosen for his calm under pressure and expertise with gunpowder. They packed 36 barrels of it beneath the chamber, enough to level the building. But on the night of November 4th, a tip-off reached authorities. Guards found Fawkes guarding the explosives, fuse and watch in hand. Under torture, he revealed the conspiracy, leading to mass arrests and executions. The blast that never happened changed Britain anyway. The discovery strengthened Protestant unity, reshaped anti-Catholic laws, and left Guy Fawkes immortalized each November 5th when bonfires and fireworks mark the night the kingdom survived. He became both villain and folk hero, proof that one plot can brand a name across centuries. General Andrey Vlasov. During World War II, Soviet General Andrey Vlasov went from hero to traitor in record time. A decorated commander who helped defend Moscow in 1941, he was captured by the Germans a year later after a disastrous counteroffensive. Many Soviet officers died in Nazi camps. Vlasov saw an opportunity. He offered to form a Russian army to fight with Germany against Stalin, claiming it was to free his homeland from tyranny. The Germans accepted, cautiously. They allowed him to create the Russian Liberation Army, but never fully trusted him. Vlasov became the figurehead for a movement that drew tens of thousands of Soviet POWs desperate to escape starvation. By 1945, his forces switched again, siding with Czech resistance against the Nazis in the war's final chaos. After Germany's collapse, U.S. troops handed him to the Soviets. Tried for treason, he was hanged in 1946. In Russian memory, Vlasov's name remains toxic, a man who traded one dictatorship for another and discovered that betraying tyranny rarely earns freedom.
Joseph Fouche. If betrayal were an art, Joseph Fouche would be its Renaissance master. Once a fiery Jacobin during the French Revolution, he voted for the execution of Louis XVI, then quietly switched allegiances as each new power rose and fell. Under Napoleon Bonaparte, he led the secret police, mastering surveillance and manipulation. Fouche knew everything: who plotted, who whispered, who might rebel. When the empire trembled, he betrayed Napoleon in advance, secretly dealing with royalists and foreign powers alike. After Napoleon's defeat, Fouche presented himself to the returning Bourbon monarchy as indispensable. They rewarded him for a time. Everyone wanted his information until they realized he knew too much. Exiled in disgrace, he died abroad, leaving behind one of history's finest cases of survival through duplicity. Fouche's life reads like a manual on the politics of self-preservation. No ideology, no loyalty, only the conviction that power belongs to whoever knows the most secrets.
Philippe Petain. Few reputations collapsed faster than Marshal Philippe Petain's. In World War I, he was France's savior, the hero of Verdun, the man who promised they shall not pass, and made good on it. 25 years later, during World War II, that same hero signed away his country. When German forces crushed France in 1940, Pétain, then 84 years old, took control of what was left, the Vichy regime, a collaborationist government that obeyed Nazi demands. He justified surrender as a way to protect the French people, calling it realism instead of defeat. But under his rule, thousands of Jews were deported, resistance fighters executed, and France split into obedience and rebellion. He met Hitler in person, shaking hands for the cameras as his nation watched in despair. After liberation, Pétain was tried for treason. The court sentenced him to death, but Charles de Gaulle commuted it to life imprisonment, seeing no honor in executing a broken old man. He died in 1951, isolated on a fortress island, proof that even the greatest military reputations can vanish under the weight of collaboration.
Oleg Penkovsky. During the Cold War, the most critical intelligence victory of the West came not from gadgets, but from one man, Oleg Penkovsky, a colonel in Soviet military intelligence. By the late 1950s, he had grown disgusted with Khrushchev's regime and its reckless aggression. Under the nose of the KGB, he approached British and American contacts, offering classified data in exchange for nothing more than ideological satisfaction. For 2 years, Penkovsky passed thousands of pages of documents, missile specs, deployment maps, nuclear strategies. His information gave Washington the confidence to confront Moscow during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Historians credit him with helping prevent all-out war. But betrayal, even for noble reasons, rarely goes unpunished. In 1962, Soviet agents uncovered his network. He was tried in secret and executed the following year. To the West, he was a hero. To the Soviets, the ultimate traitor. Oleg Penkovsky stands as a reminder that one person's treason can also be another's salvation.
Mirabeau and the French monarchists. Honoré Gabriel de Mirabeau was once the voice of freedom during the French Revolution, a brilliant orator who electrified the National Assembly with demands for equality and constitutional rule. But by 1790, the country was unraveling, mobs ruled the streets, and Mirabeau's resolve began to crack. Secretly, he met with King Louis XVI's court, accepting payments to advise the monarchy on how to keep power under revolutionary disguise. To the public, he remained a champion of change. Behind closed doors, he plotted compromise and survival. After his death in 1791, letters revealed the double life: hero of liberty by day, consultant to a king by night. The discovery stunned France. For decades, admirers tried to excuse him as a realist, but history remembered the contradiction. Mirabeau's story captures the quieter side of betrayal, not daggers or coups, but the slow erosion of ideals traded for influence. He became proof that revolutions die less from force than from the soft whisper of their own heroes.